Thank you very much, guys. I am, of course, joined by Exile. Now, let's just start with the simple stuff. How does it feel to have won here in the semifinals?
Feels pretty good after all. Like the series was actually pretty, exciting for us because, like, if we win, this means a lot because we go to finals in Hamburg, which is like an insane opportunity, especially against G2, which is like the kings of Europe right now. So yeah, this is like just really awesome for us that we made it to the finals.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Definitely a lot of fans here today excited to see you on that stage for those finals. I want to talk to you about your performance. You versus PowerOfEvil was kind of one of our big matchups to watch. A lot of people were curious to see how it would play out. How did you feel about your performance there in the mid lane?
I think overall, I'm not too satisfied with my performance today. I think that I wasn't that useful on whenever I picked LeBlanc. I think the Vladimir games, though, were quite fine, even though the second game kind of mid lane fell apart a bit after the double kill. But yeah, I think regardless, like Vladimir is such a strong teamfight champion. And yeah, I just like to play the champion a lot. So I think maybe more in the future, I'm going to look to pick this more.
So from my perspective, for the most part, it looked really good. But there was that one moment, you're going to go up against Lulu. I know it's a pick you haven't seen in a while. You get solo killed in lane. What happened there? What is that matchup like to play out?
Actually, this matchup is, like, he was maxing E on Lulu, so he doesn't have any wave clear at all. And I kind of realized this like level 5 or something. And I kind of knew that I should just play defensive, just go for a bit magic resistance. And once I push out mid lane, like he's stranded there and has like really hard time pushing out the wave actually, or farming under turret. So this is like really heavily in favor for LeBlanc after 1 point. Yeah, but I actually disrespected the Lulu a bit and managed to die, which is like the worst case. But I think overall it was still, like, I mean, in the end I learned something that I should just respect it a bit more. But yeah.
All right, definitely a learning opportunity. Well, we saw you guys play pretty bloody games today, but in the past you guys have talked about having good macro. Fnatic says they've adopted a style from you that they're referring to as animal style. I kind of want your opinions on that name for the way that you guys play the game. Do you think it's fair to call what you're doing the quote-unquote animal style?
I don't think it's like basically deserves to be called animal style. I think that we have a high mid lane priority, like in the mid game, that we just try to push mid lane first, basically whenever. And I think this is like the core of how mid game and like later on macro should be played. Like basically who controls the mid lane kind of controls the game, like the pace of the game. And I don't think it's necessarily animal style. I mean, when the enemy tries to contest, then the games kind of end up in an ARAM where like we just wall in the mid lane for a bit. But yeah, overall I think we just play correct macro most of the time. I mean, sometimes we extend to dives or something, but most of the time it's actually like calculated play. It's not like that you just go for it without thinking about it.
All right, well, it's good to see that. Very different, obviously, from the macro that we see from other teams, but clearly you have a clear strategy behind it, focusing around that mid lane. Now, you said it yourself, going up against the Kings of Europe in Hamburg. What are your thoughts on that matchup? How are you feeling about it right now?
I think that G2 is an insanely strong team right now. Like, whenever we swim against them, we learn a lot, actually. And also, like, the games they play is just, like, they're always really on point with macro and with the ideas they have in-game. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a tough series, but, like, we're going to prepare for our lives for this game. Like, every day of the week now, we don't even take any breaks. So, yeah, we just try to get as much practice as possible. And I think that we have really good scrim partners in Europe with Fnatic and Misfits. So, yeah, I think that we can definitely have a chance.
All right, I'm just going to ask straight out, are you guys going to be the team to take down G2?
Yes, we will.
All right, good to hear the confidence. Congrats again on your semifinal victory here. We'll see you guys next week in Hamburg. But for now, we'll send it over to the post-game lobby where Shox and crew are standing by.
Vielen Dank, Dracos and Exile, and welcome to the post-game lobby where we are going to discuss the semifinals and look ahead towards the big highlight in Hamburg next weekend. And if anything, this Misfits versus Unicorns of Love series was a very, very entertaining and scrappy stress.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Unicorns of Love coming out very strong at the beginning of the series, and we thought that maybe it was the same kind of style for Misfits as the first two games of last week. Like, Xerxes, Rookie of the Split, announced this week, shows exactly why. Game 1, Gragas gets flexed to the jungle, multiple explosive casts that just set Misfits so far behind. Unicorns ended up taking the win.
Caps, we looked at the mid lane, PowerOfEvil versus Exile over the 4 games. How do you think it played out?
So I think the first game was was Exile with the mid lane priority, which led to a huge lead in the early game for Unicorns. And then second, third game, it was kind of the PowerOfEvil show where he kind of took over. And then game forward, it just turned to
the Vladimir show.
Yeah, exactly. Just the Unicorn show, I think, where they had so much hard engage, and they were really good at using all this hard engage to constantly fight.
Yeah, the Unicorns, they were 2 games up. The Misfits, they did manage to come back in game 3. Trashy. So there was this looming sense of will the reverse sweep again happen, and the Misfits showed why they are definitely not to count out, and why they will also be a strong contender in that 3rd place game.
Yeah, for sure. But to be honest, I feel like this series was a great example of why Xerxe is the rookie of the split. He was consistently outperforming Kakao, and I felt like Kakao didn't really have a lot of impact in the games overall. Like in some of the games, he was shut down by Xerxe, and some of the other games, it just felt like he couldn't really do much. Maybe it was because of the picks, I'm not sure, but it just felt like Xerxe had the upper hand. And actually, I feel like the jungle matchup was the biggest. Like the matchup that had like the biggest flaws for Misfits in this series. So huge props to Xerxe. He played really well today.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like Kakao, when his team wasn't doing well, seemed to struggle. Xerxe, even when his team was doing, playing from behind, Xerxe still making solid, consistent plays. Like he stole Baron with like an auto on Gragas in one of the games. I mean, maybe not exactly the most crisp of plays, but he nailed it. Like got it right in there.
And Trashy, you're mentioning as well the fact that he actually, a lot of times in the series also, he picked matchups. He picked the Gragas, who actually isn't that great super early versus the Graves, but Kakao on the one hand doesn't do his due diligence, and on the other hand, Xerxe does.
Yeah, I feel like Kakao doesn't really take a lot of risk. He pretty much just goes for the standard play almost every time, and it was kind of the same when we were playing them as well. Like he was always doing standard pathing. We were catching him a lot off guard because he kind of failed to adapt in series, and that when you do the same pathing over and over again, you can kind of take advantage of this. And I felt like Xerxe was doing that in this series, and it really showed in the games.
Yeah, and I think it's good to commend him for his first split coming in. He had that dip around IEM. He said that he kind of saw the limits of his own play.
Yeah, also one thing to notice also, I feel like UOL is actually setting Xerxe up a lot of times for success. Like first game we saw that bot lane leashing, we saw fifth in the last game here, 4th game. We also saw that bot lane leashing for him, so he gets a faster clear and can kind of get more pace in the jungle. And huge props to UOL's bot lane, like leashing and then going to lane and still solo, like 2v2 killing. Like I feel like that's really impressive, and
that's
something
crazy.
we also should talk about.
Yeah, you want to talk about that more now?
That was really good.
All right, fantastic. I mean, it is quite interesting because we always say, well, this isn't the strongest bottom lane, obviously, and we know that they're going to be at the deficit, so I'd say, well, let's just put ourselves at an even greater deficit and then outplay them mechanically in the lane.
One of the matchups that was the highlight coming into it, mid lane, we've already discussed about those two against each other. I want to know, though, Caps, PowerOfEvil, he played well in this series. He's going up against you next week. What's your thoughts on him specifically as an opponent for Fnatic in the 3rd place game?
So I think a lot of the series came down to Exile playing Vladimir and LeBlanc, and then PowerOfEvil having some counter picks prepared. Myself, I play LeBlanc as well, so now I know the counter picks he has ready for LeBlanc, but also have a lot of other like random champions, I guess, ready, and I don't think he will have a counter pick ready for something that I don't even know what is yet.
Oh, who's going to get the KL? So I think that's a super good point.
I know Caps told me off air that he's going to clap him, so...
All right. Well, it is interesting because you both have enormous champion pools and real big variants there. So we'll see what happens. But we're also going to hear from PowerOfEvil himself now as he's standing by with Dracos.
Oh, Caps, this is so awkward. Your opponent is just sitting right here. That's... All right, well, let's hear your side of the story. You versus Caps. Before we talk about the series, let's just get it out of the way. Who's going to come out on top?
Well, I think Caps reminds me a little bit of me in UOL, and since he plays so many different champions and has these pocket picks like Aurelion Sol, he actually brought me back to the KL. I need to say, I need to credit him. The only reason we found out this pick was really good against Vladimir was because he played it before. Didn't work out in our series. but I think it's going to be really difficult because I think both of us have huge champion pools. So I think it's a lot about preparing counter picks and preparing like really safe picks, because I think both of us have, like as you said and SC already said, like really enormous champion pools.
Well, looking back at the series now that we've had a chance to acknowledge some of the potential trash talk coming in from Caps, more from Trashy, I guess, supporting him in the background. How did you feel about your performance today, specifically up in the mid lane against Exile?
I think besides the first and fourth game, I think it was fine, but yeah, I could have probably played a little bit better. I'm quite happy about my second and third game, especially since we always had the mid lane priority. We kind of got these advantages from mid lane and kind of translated them to some lead. Obviously, I'm proud that we stayed so long in the first game. We had the corky, we kind of fall behind, but we pulled it all the way to the late game. We should have won it, I think, but they kind of, I guess, catch us off guard with the TPs and just killed us. So I think we were all a little bit sad about losing the late games since we had the better lane game comp.
What was the communication like in the team after losing those first two games? Now, you had come back and reverse swept Splice in the past. Were you guys at all worried, concerned? Did you kind of feel that pressure mounting on you?
I was actually quite disappointed after our second game, since like we had such an enormous lead in mid lane, and Vladimir was like 2-3 levels behind, and I think that was our free win, or we should have translated it into a free win, but we just didn't communicate correctly. I think we didn't just play the map correctly in general. Like we didn't build up the vision correctly, and when we built it up, we just instantly gave it away. And since we had like a 4,000 or 5,000 gold lead, I imagine, it's like we should just engage and just win the fights. Even I think we had a split push top laner. I can't remember which one, but we should still be able to win fights. But we just didn't engage. I think we just played way too scared. And I think since we like had the playstyle from game one, where we need to like scale and win late game, I think we just, I don't know, for some reason we just thought Lulu, Caitlyn, we can wait for late game, but enemy team has Vladimir, and I was like kind of sad since I was consistently saying like, guys, we need to fight now because they have Vladimir. And I think we can just learn from these games, since I think like even me, I didn't think that we will lose late game that hard.
Maybe potentially gaining a better understanding of your comps. For the last question, I want to ask you about yourself. Now, you've gone from Unicorns of Love, where you played crazy picks, feels like constantly, but of course, just in some of those games, you went to OG, you played a lot of Varus. It feels like a much smaller pool overall. And now on Misfits, you've been playing a lot of different champions. I feel like a lot of different styles, roaming a lot, playing more conservatively in the mid lane. Where do you see yourself as a player? Where do you see your style right now? What do you think are your big strengths?
Well, this question comes up a lot, and I think the biggest difference from like all these teams is that I think in UOL I had mostly like mechanics and like champion pool and not like really a lot of knowledge. It worked out since they UOL played really good around me, and I think we just had like really good team fighting. In Origin it was more like I needed to play more reserved, I needed to like play more the map and communicate way more, so it was kind of hard to like adapt from like completely different style in UOL. And I could learn a lot from like all the veterans in Origin, so it was a huge learning experience, even if it didn't go well. Like even if it goes bad and you lose a lot of games, like or go relegations, it's like all these bad things that happen you can just improve on and learn. So I think I could like learn so much in Origin that I can translate all of this now in Misfits, and I can kind of combine the knowledge of Origin and the mechanics of UOL, I think. Yeah.
All right, so now with the knowledge and with the mechanics, well, that's good to hear. We will see in the week to come how you fare against Fnatic, how you fare against Caps in the mid lane. But for more from Caps, Shocks, the entire crew over there at the desk, we'll send it back to the post-game lobby.
Thank you, Draco. It's fantastic to hear from PowerOfEvil there as well. And also interesting that he said, well, I'm learning all these things. You know, you had the big champion pool, the mechanics, and you got to learn how to play the map. And that's something that we heard from a lot of mid laners. Febevan said the same thing. Perk said the same thing. And you, Caps, are, of course, very much at the beginning of that kind of professional trajectory. And we hear from a lot of mid laners, you're mechanically so strong. You go in for the outplay. What is kind of your next goal? What would you like to improve in your personal play?
So I think I've said this in a few interviews that the last couple of weeks we switched it from trying to learn how to play the map and try to play a perfect game, and we instead started just play the animal style, as we said. So I guess it has been a lot of focus on mechanics last couple of weeks and champion pool and just finding different picks that we want to use for our games. But once this season is over, like not that season, the split is over, I think I'll probably try to focus more on learning how to actually play the game.
How to actually play the game on a macro level. I will see you guys still have a third place match to play because yesterday G2 they took the first spot in the final with a 3-1 win over you guys over Fnatic. Now it was 4 games in the end. You guys started off so good but couldn't keep it going, and that's kind of testament to how good G2 is, I guess. Or what exactly was it?
So I think game 1 we were trying to play this, like we were just playing constantly aggressive, and coming into game 2 we wanted to do the same. Somewhat in the middle of game 2 things started going the other way and we started doubting ourselves, I guess. Come game 3 and game 4, I'm not sure what happened. I guess we were a bit scared of doing all of doing mistakes, so we turned back to the Fnatic we maybe have seen halfway through this, like in the middle of the split, where we were not really proactive. And I mean, in game 4, we blind pick kill, so I think we were just trolling it.
It felt kind of like G2 over the series downloaded your play style quite well. Like points where your team have picked up kills by either Reckless going to Soaz, Soaz going to Reckless, and getting a kill out on the side lane. Expect just wasn't making those mistakes anymore. Game 2, game 3, the actual windows to punish got smaller and smaller, and it looked like G2 just really heavily adapted late on.
Also, it shows the experience that G2 has as a team. Like, adapting mid-series has always been something. Actually, in the past, they weren't necessarily that good at, especially at like international tournaments. And I hate to bring it up, but yeah. But actually, this series, they really adapted to everything that Fnatic was throwing at them. And I was actually also talking with some of the G2 members after the series, and they were thinking about everything that Fnatic was throwing at them. How do we manage to win against this, all that they throw at them? So props to them.
Yeah, props to them indeed. And with that, we can take a look at the bracket. And now that we also have the Unicorns of Love winning and locking in their spot in the final. G2 versus UOL and Fnatic versus Misfits for the third place match. Same thing, really. So that third place match, let's start with that one, Fnatic versus Misfits. After what you saw from Misfits today, are they beatable, Caps? Are you going to write them in the
I think it's a lot more about us than about them, like who's going to turn out victorious, because if that team that showed up that 3-0'd H2K and the team that showed up that won the first game, if we're going to actually play aggressive and actually do all sort of things, then I think we can easily beat them. But if we instead don't do anything and we're just like waiting for them to slowly take over the game, then we might as well get 3-0'd. So.
I hope production can tell me what we just saw there on that camera action. Trashy, you talked a lot about Kakao and the fact that he was quite predictable and whatnot in the early game and his pathing. I feel like we could say the same thing about Broxa just because it is kind of his first split or his first games.
Not at all, actually.
Okay.
I think because in the third place match, I actually think because Fnatic are playing so fast, I think Misfits really needs to adapt. Especially from what they showed today, because I feel like if Fnatic is coming in with fast play style, I think they'll just roll over Misfits, because they have shown that Misfits really likes to play slow, and Kakao doesn't really take a lot of chances in the early game, and I feel like if you don't match the Fnatic style a little bit, then you will get rolled over. So honestly, Fnatic is the favorites for me.
I think for other reasons, like I think G2, the adaptation you were talking about as well, things like the lane swap didn't work out so well yesterday, but I think a player like Alvari, who, he wasn't in LCS when they were lane swapping, like some of the communication issues that might arise in that kind of situation that G2 handled very well may very well punish such a rookie player as Alvari, who's done great, but he's no Soaz. He hasn't played 200+ competitive games and can handle most situations when he's out on his own.
No, and it will be on the big stage.
To be honest, like when you see this kind of lane swaps, you have 1 week to prepare for it, and you should, at that time, you should be able to sit down with your players, and because it's not just one player that has to adapt. Like everyone has to adapt to the swap, and because they have shown it now, Fnatic, everyone on Misfits needs to know, like, if this happens, how do we react? Like, that has to be fundamentals about, like, how to play the game. So I wouldn't really be too afraid of that, like from Misfits' side, because they know what is coming.
I think that's very interesting, though, because with a week's scrim time, to suddenly have to go, okay, we've got to learn lane swaps, that like now means you've got a week of playing where Fnatic have this potential mind game where maybe you've used all of this time trying to defend against something that was never going to get played anyway. So I think you're right. Like you absolutely can play around it, but that's a lot of practice time going down on one strategy.
Yeah, I think the most like concerning thing for Misfits about it is that they like. Alfari needs, if he, for example, is playing in a pushing matchup where he needs to push level 1, and he has in mind that they might gank me level 1, then he might not play the matchups out as he wants to. So there's a lot of mind games from Fnatic sides. So I mean, it's in theory what Fnatic is doing should never work, but with the picks they have and stuff, how they execute it, it actually kind of works if you don't know how to react to it.
And in general, I think the playoffs so far have just shown us really interesting things in terms of picks and bans. And of course, most of it has come from Fnatic and from the Unicorns of Love. So it'll be very exciting to see, and from PowerOfEvil. So it will be very exciting to see how that evolves. But it's been exciting so far. But we have to talk about the final. G2 versus the Unicorns of Love. To set the scene, G2, obviously defending champions, super strong at the top of Group A, very convincingly, but so are the Unicorns of Love. And to add that extra spice to it, this is where the organization of the Unicorns of Love was born, in Hamburg. That's where Sheepy's from and his family. Not that that is something that is trackable on the Rift, but in terms of momentum and in terms of, the moment and everything, the stars lining up, I feel like for the Unicorns of Love, this is a very big one.
I feel like this is a massive series. I think even bigger than their Fnatic finals, the first split that they came in. I mean, every hero needs a villain. I think it's so good that we've got Unicorns up against G2, possibly the most popular team we have, against a team that some fans feel like have led down the region. Now, I think G2 have done very well in international competition, especially recently, but we have to ask now, will it be a Unicorn Stampede, or will the Kings of Europe make a Unicorn Steed their ride to MSI this year? Because I think G2 are looking unstoppable, in my opinion. I think Unicorns today won't beat G2 of yesterday.
All right, Caps, what do you think? How big of a chance do the Unicorns have?
I think it's definitely favored G2. Unicorns can catch them off guard, as we saw. Like yesterday, we were able to take one game off them. And if Unicorns come in like we did and just play full-on aggression, they can take the first game, and maybe they then adapt and have some other cheese ready or what they have ready, which means that they can take a game or two. I don't think they'll go all 3 games though.
Trashy, come on, can they do it?
I mean, I don't know, but what I will say though is that I feel like some of the mistakes UOL were doing will be way harder punished by G2, and I feel like the consistency of perks contra the more inconsistency from Exile might be the thing that's going to turn it around, because some of the games today were not that clean from Exile, and if you do these mistakes against G2, I feel like they will just roll over you. Yeah,
at the beginning of the day, Verius had his presentation there also about Exile with the high amounts of isolated deaths and just going in, and they, it's better now, but I mean, is it really? He still does it, but the team wins a lot. And Perks, we can't say it enough, he has had a fantastic split. He was player of the series versus you guys yesterday as well, and he seems to be back on top of his game.
You also look at the bot lane as well. Sven and Mithy back on the upswing. Dealt with Reckless and Jezz quite handily yesterday.
I mean, Mithy wasn't too happy with his performance, honestly.
Mithy, I don't think is. I don't mean this in a bad way. He's never happy with his performance unless he's like won a world championship, right? Is in his mind that's the place he wants to go to. But I think today, Hansammer and Ignar didn't challenge Samax and Hylissang the same way that Sven and Mithy will challenge in that bot lane, and I think that's another area that you have to start moving over to G2's side of the court.
So if we look at all these, we have of course the mid jungle, this and that. But what about the jungle top combo?
Yeah, I mean, that is for sure like where I feel like UOL has at least even footing in the matchup. I think Vizisachi is a really solid player. Like I feel like he never really loses lane. He's always relevant in the game, and he's always comes into team fights very strong. And sometimes we have seen G2 have like communication issues with TP and with Expect in general. So I feel like that is probably where if I was UOL, I would look to draft strong for Vizisachi and hope he can take over the game.
All right, well, we'll see what happens. It'll be super, super interesting. And we will be back for the finals in Hamburg next weekend, starting with the third place match between Fnatic and Misfits. And that series begins at 5 p.m. Central European Summertime. And don't forget, on Sunday, we will preview the final with a special pregame show starting at 4:30 p.m. So mark your calendars. Very excited to be there. We all will be. And thank you very much for joining us as well today, guys.
Looking good.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you. No problem.
I like the
no
pink
problem.
one better, though.
The pink one better, yeah, well. And we also have a unicorn,
That's why I stole
actually,
it. That's why I took this one.
All right, so now it's both for the Misfits and for the unicorns.
I guess so, yeah.
No bias on the analyst desk. Well, thank you very much for watching. Time for us to log off for the night, and the best is yet to come here in the EU LCS Spring Split. So gear up, get ready, and we will see you in Hamburg.
He's always stronger than you.
I'm aggressive.
Oh, three-man belly pop. Xerxes sent him flying, and Hans Sama down under tower. Kakao trying to kite away. Xerxes, that's why this guy is rookie of the split.
Nice!
He gets it! Xerxes comes right back in! Right on it. It's the exhaust. They get the channel complete. He goes in with the Exile, but Ignore takes him out.
Nice! Can we go? Corki! Come in. End it. We need the wave. Oh, come in. Nice! Can you get?
That's the ace, that's the base, and this is game one to Unicorns. What a barn burner!
But what summons do they have? What summons is space?
I have no flash. Nice!
I can speed that shit.
Exile takes out Ignar. Exile in the middle looking for Hans Sama here. Does he have it? He does! The double kill! The shockwave! It pulls him in! But is it too little? Is it too late? A triple kill for Exile! They will be able to take that all the way to the finish, closing out game number 2. A big statement from the Unicorns, and it's match point, baby! Ultimate cannon! Right under tower. PowerOfEvil, that's a big picks, and they're throwing down the damage right now. But there's of course no Nexus. There's no Nexus. They can win. That's what I said. They're gonna win. One inhibitor. They gotta do it. We're gonna win. Misfits are gonna do it. It's a double kill. Oh my God! Nexus, put on your dancing shoes, cause Misfits are staying alive. But now he's being turned back around. He just can't close the damage. That's disgusting. That's the only one left. Backdoor your Nexus alone. The double kill. That's it. It was a big series, but Unicorns will not be denied. And they are headed to the finals 2 years in